Welcome back to Lost for Words with Lori. It's Tuesday. It is August the 9th, and good morning. It's coffee time, right? It's been a minute. I hope everyone is doing well on this Tuesday morning. Sky is clear. It's been hot in the southeast, hot and humid. It's like inhaling soup sometimes when you wake up. But yeah, good morning. I wake up and smell the toxic. I can't always say that the interwebs and social media is toxic because, I happen to enjoy, toxic cesspool world sometimes, and that's what we refer to a lot of the platforms as. But, I like social media, and, we talk a lot about the toxic cesspool world and certain platforms being a circus and just all the chaos that goes on it. But, I like a lot of aspects of social media and Facebook being one of them because my Facebook is a wonderful place. Lately, it's been filled with a lot of kitten pictures and updates on the cats and, of course, my bird. But, wake up, people. Grab your coffee because, here we go. But social media is not Fantasy Island, and I think that's the reality of the situation that people, don't really recognize. And, I, like a lot of people, came to social media as a place to escape from the first world stress and the first world issues that plague most people. Your real world is a harsh place, and responsibility and adulting really blows. And back in the day, social media was a great escape. I started there to play games and to meet people and to talk about music, and then moved on to like MySpace, which was a really cool platform for me to connect with people all over the world about music. And then, of course, now we've got multiple platforms for everything under the sun. Whatever your poison is, you can find it on social media. But, the reality is it's not Fantasy Island. It's not a fantasy world. And it's not perfect. It, more often than not, is very negative as opposed to being positive. But like everything in the world, it is what you make of it, and it can be whatever, you want it to be. I mean, people will escape to the social medias for lots of reasons. I mean, basically, the first world does suck. I mean, adulting sucks, and bills and responsibilities suck, and some people don't have social skills, and there's a lot of people who have social anxiety, and being able to interact with people on the internet eliminates that anxiety for a lot of people who don't do well in a first world interaction. A lot of people use the internet for business, especially on YouTube or eBay or whatever, to sell products or, to network or whatever for their business. And there's lots of platforms for that. But one of the things that I think people fail to realize is that nobody really gives a fuck about you on the social media platforms, and that's a reality that a lot of people don't really look that in the eye for what it is. There are good people out there, but if you go onto the internet with that naive expectation that everybody there is your friend and they care about you, you're going to be sorely disappointed and let down because nobody really gives a fuck about you in your real world. And people are really out for themselves. And I think that's society too, not just the internet. But one of the biggest, I think, things about social media in itself is that there's no accountability and there's no consequences. Everybody is hiding behind a keyboard, and there are no real world or what am I trying to say? Think, Lori, think. It's early and I'm only about a half a cup of coffee in, but there aren't any immediate consequences for your behavior on social media. So you can do what you want, you can say what you want, and you can run around trashing people, and there are no consequences. Of course, if you hit up the wrong person, you can get filed, a lawsuit for slander or libel or those kinds of things. But chances are the average human doesn't have the resources to file a lawsuit against you. And we see that in our communities in Talk Successful World of people threatening, oh, I'm going to, sue you for this and I'm going to do that. And that never happens. A lot of people blow a lot of smoke up people's asses. But there's no accountability. And that's frustrating, especially when people come to a social media platform looking for an escape from the real world for fun or for fellowship, and they encounter a lot of sociopaths and a lot of people who are up to no good, and they get caught in, the toxic cycle of behaviors, and it's easy to do because you think and your expectations are that, everybody else is there for the same reason that you are. And that can be very disappointing. And when, the curtain drops and you realize the truth about certain things or about certain people, then you kind of go, oh, man, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't what I wanted. So... being a part of the internet or, the World Wide Web for 20 some years and seeing the experiment that it is and watching it grow, evolve, and change, much as we all do as humans. And, spending the last couple of months doing a lot of, podcasts about behaviors that I've recognized and seen in people, a lot of it being very disgusting and very toxic. I've met some very wonderful people. And I'm pausing to take a drink of my coffee because coffee is the magical elixir of life. Good morning, bird. But you have to come to a point where you have realistic expectations about social media. And, I've thought and I've talked with a lot of different people about what we do in our own, bubbles or our own circles of people on the social medias about establishing really good expectations with the people that we know and how we call out bad behavior and hold people around us accountable, including ourselves, for the way that we act and interact with people on the platforms that we're on. And, keeping in mind, no one really truly, unless you know them in real life or you've met them and you understand and communicate with them openly and honestly, is your friend, really. Especially in the virtual world, because you don't know and you can't trust anybody unless you establish that open line of communication. But again, unless they're in your first world, you have to kind of operate on that premise until you can establish that communication and that trust. But if you operate on that premise that no one is your friend, and take it in that manner and have realistic expectations about what you're there on social media for, it takes you pretty far, and you be transparent about what your motives are, what you're there for. If you're there for business, you're transparent about what your business is there for, what your goals are, and what you're there to accomplish. Then people are less likely to try to trash you or use and abuse what you're there for, your business. And if you're there for fun and fellowship, it's the same way. But being realistic about that, not everyone is your friend. And if you're transparent about what you're about, and you have boundaries with those people, and you're calling out bad behavior and holding people, including yourself, accountable for what they're saying, what they're doing, and how they're treating people, normally the problems and the people and the trash will take itself out. I don't give attention to people who treat other people badly, and I ignore that bad behavior. And I tell people, if you're gonna, do this kind of shit, do it somewhere else, because I really don't have time for that. Um, Scorekeeping's dumb. Making friends in communities and then trying to pit them against each other is immature and stupid. Try not to gossip or take sides, especially in, social circles on internet communities, because honestly, we're older than that and we're not children. And it gets old. I mean, we're grown-ups and adults, and lately I see so many people just acting like they're toddlers. They throw tantrums when they don't get their way on the interwebs, and wah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to quit, and I'm going to, make your life a living hell, and they run around acting like children. And, we're better than that. As a society and as adults, all this immature behavior on social media is kind of ridiculous. And if we start holding ourselves and each other accountable and to a higher standard on the internet, it can change to be a more wonderful place. But again, if you treat other people in a virtual world the way that you would in a physical, real first world, you would probably notice the change. Because if I talk to some of the people on the virtual world the way that I've seen people do that in my first world, I'd probably have gotten my ass kicked a few times. And like I said, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I hurt people's feelings too. But real adults manage conflict resolution in a much more civilized manner than to run around trashing people and doing hate streams and talking shit and creating chaos for other people, and then they supposedly feel good about themselves. But again, I understand that there are people who need social media, especially with the current situation in the world, where they locked everybody down and there is no social interaction in person. But we still have to hold ourselves to a higher standard and treat people the way that we want to be treated. And it doesn't give anybody a right to be an asshole just because you're hiding behind a keyboard and there are no consequences. And at what point do we start taking accountability and holding other people responsible for their words and their actions, and telling them that if you want to act like that, then you can go have a timeout and sit in the corner until you learn to start acting like a person who isn't a douchebag, because I don't want to surround myself with douchebags in real life, and I certainly don't want to surround myself with douchebags on the interwebs either. And I don't want to be one of those people who isn't being told that you're acting like a douchebag, and then show up in other people's communities or in their social circles on the interwebs, and then have people talk shit about them either. Be honest with the people that you supposedly like, but do it in a way that's responsible. If I have a friend in my first world who's got a booger up their nose, I'm going to be like, pull them aside quietly and be like, hey man, you might want to go blow your nose. You got a booger up your nose. I'm not going to embarrass them in public. But of course, if you have a friend who's a total douchebag and they don't take constructive criticism very well and they continue to be a douchebag, they probably aren't going to be my friend for very long. I'm not going to hang out with them in the first world. I'm probably not going to hang out with them in the virtual world either. So, again, social media is not Fantasy Island. It's not a fucking fairy tale. It's, not, Dr. Seuss book. It's a real place, and real people do have feelings. And some people do take it seriously, and it does hurt their feelings. And we've got to be responsible for the way that we handle ourselves and act and talk and do business and have friends on the platforms. But that's what I think about when I have my coffee on a Tuesday morning. So just trying to share a little awareness about those kinds of things. So try to be better humans, wash your fucking hands, and I'll see y'all next time. Love you guys.